adjusting it. So.
All right, we'll make a start.
Can you see the screen over there? Cool.
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for coming. Shanley, off you go.
Yes? Okay, all right, okay. Ko Pokitawhawha te maunga, ko Watamata te moana, ko Joyce toku whānau, ko Ross rā ko Pam oku matua, ko Shanley Joyce toku ingoa. Greg, your turn?
Cool,
Go.
over
All
to
right,
me.
Here we go.
Okay, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko roi hini te moanga, ko Manawatu te awa, ko Aurora te waka, ko Pakeha te iwi, ko Greg Byrne toku ingoa, nō reira tēnā koutou katoa. So I'll start properly this time round. My name's Greg Byrne. I am a healthy active learning advisor at Sport Auckland. I have come from about 18, 17 years as a health and phys ed teacher, almost all of that time at Linfield College in Auckland. Married, 2 children, aged 9 and 11. Enjoy getting out cycling quite a bit, as much as I can. Enjoy catching really small fish in the Hauriki Gulf. Over to you, Shanley.
All right. A little bit about me. Born and bred in Auckland and taught for about 16 years in secondary school space. Ended up as a DP at Long Bay College. Had 2 wee kids and I didn't get to see them as much as I wanted to as a DP, so I am now a healthy active learning advisor at Sport Auckland and about to shift over to Sport Waitakere in a couple of weeks. I guess this is my family. Chris and my 2 young kids, they're 3 and 5 years old. Special place for us is Whangamatara from the top corner there. Been there since, that's a holiday space since I was a wee kid, so I've been there lots and lots of times. And then obviously bit of Pilates, bit of cycling. This is last year in the rail trail down at Otago with a few friends that are actually here on conference and live in Riverhead out in northwest of Auckland.
Cool. Alrighty. So the reason we decided to present today is that in our work as advisors working in primaries and intermediates, we noticed that as we set foot in these schools that a lot of their planning and their PE was very much adopting sports-centric and skills kind of led programs, if they did have the plans in place at all. The netball, rugby, small balls, large balls, that sort of thing, that was kind of driving a lot of what they were doing. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to take them on a little bit of a journey, and to do that we came up with the idea of starting with that concept-based planning and approach. So really starting with the concept, leading the way and being able to draw on the health and physical education curriculum to really bring the most out of it for their learners. So we really wanted them to schools to have a think about, what's on top for your learners, what are the current issues in your class. So wider than just health and physical education, what is going on for your kids, thinking really big picture. What school values or key comps, what are your students struggling to use? And as I said, how can the PE curriculum kind of help to meet those? Over to Shanley.
Oh, yes, Pastor. Yes. Thank you. So with this process, obviously we found that gathering some voice, not only from students, but also from whānau groups, from key people in the school, such as teachers, obviously. Guidance have some really valuable insights as well into student life at school, and also your senior leadership team. Particularly in the sports department too, in secondary space might be helpful as well. But obviously what I want to ask you now is how often do you actually gather voice in your school around your phys ed and health programs? So quick chat amongst yourselves now. How often do you gather student voice or just voice in general?
A wee belt there.
Oh, good.
That's all right. Cool. I might just, at the start of the next slide, I'll just acknowledge Ross and that.
Yeah.
Cool. It's about you guys. Gathering voice?
Yeah, that one doesn't really influence any change though. It's
No.
how was your teacher? How was the internet kind of helping you with your learning? How did you help your own learning this year? What did
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, cool. We're going to talk more about when we're starting at a place where there's some really grounded views and quite old-fashioned views, I guess you could call it, about stuff. Using that voice has been a real powerful tool, and Brandon, I'm sure you'll talk with me on this, a really powerful tool to get people kind of, listening. Hey, this is what your kids are saying. Does this align with what you're saying in other parts of your school?
Grab that one if you want, yeah. Or just there, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Is that right?
Yeah, stop there. Okay, I'm just going to bring you back in again. Quick, anybody want to offer some suggestions? How often do you actually get a voice? Yeah.
We go
Once a term.
with our students,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of our programs in the last 2 years, as you're saying, have been driven by student voice, and we've made some changes based on feedback.
Awesome. Anybody else? Yeah. Once a year, end of the year. Hey, yeah, it's better than none, hey? Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I guess the question is, why do we actually have to gather that student voice too? Any suggestions? Why do we need to gather that voice?
Our program should be focusing on mental health, what they want and need.
Yeah. Does anybody actually gather other voice other than just student voice? Parents? Community? Yeah. And obviously we've got the health consultation, which should be take place biannually. And it doesn't have to be just health education that we're consulting on there too. You've got opportunity to ask the whānau about what they offer in their PE programs as well, so it's an opportunity. And obviously in our work in primary schools in terms of gathering student voice, we've gone about this in a few variety of different ways. So we've either had focus groups of year groups coming to see us, maybe 10 to 12 kids, and getting their suggestions from then, or even just talking to them at morning teas and lunch times, or even in PE lessons, observing what's actually happening, looking at schemes of work as well. So gathering lots of different pieces of data to obviously paint that picture.
Cool.
But I guess the question too is, is how often is practical for you too? Yeah? Yeah.
Can you get too much student voice? Like, if there's another Google form that the kids have to
Yeah,
fill in
potentially.
after every assessment, or I guess it's striking that balance.
It's that balance, absolutely, Jamie, yeah. Yeah. Particularly, I guess, with, Kimmy Order, yeah.
What sort of voice you're gathering. What do you want from them? If you're asking the same questions after every minute, then
Yeah.
don't ask.
Yeah. Getting valuable data, right? Rather than just data for data's sake. Yeah. Cool.
I guess a lot of our voice, I was just mentioning the table down here, a lot of the voice we've gathered is not as much as it is for the students. It's actually to try and shift some perspectives on what health and PE is in the settings we've been working in. So that voice has become a really powerful tool in just getting some shifts happening with staff. When they see the kids saying things that don't align with what they're saying in other parts of the school, it's quite powerful.
Yep.
So it's, as well as reflecting on a piece of unit of work or learning, it's actually even bigger picture than that. Cool. So we developed this planning tool. Now, just before I start this, I just want to acknowledge Marisa, James, the team who developed the Understanding Health and Physical Education resource. If you went to Marisa's session in the first, this kind of influenced us quite a bit in terms of how we approached it, but we've sort of definitely taken our own sort of twist on things. So as it's sitting in front of you is that template. We're basically just working left to right across that template, if you haven't sort of figured that. So we wanted to help schools and take them on a bit of a journey. So this tool really helps us to take them on that journey from perhaps one place and where we want to get them to. It's a co-construction process. So whereas we've got these 6 columns, I think there are in here, at some schools we went into, they wanted to add certain things into this planning. Maybe there were certain focuses they had school-wide throughout the year, or just things that were normal to them or that happened in their school. So it certainly wasn't, this is what you must use. It was definitely co-construction. We also encouraged them when we did use this planning to take what we've done here and merge it or incorporate it into their own existing plans. So it's not just something different for health and PE, it sort of aligns with what else is happening in the school. Obviously this is in the primary and intermediate space. Yep.
Cool, so what we're going to do now is kind of, I guess, take you through that journey. In terms of the first column, and a lot of this is based around the questions that Marisa and the rest of the team did with that resource they presented this morning. So again, what's going on for your learners? What life lessons do you feel your learners need to explore what school class values, I guess, are they maybe not meeting at the moment. Common examples when I talk to teachers, those of teachers of year 1 are kids obviously managing themselves, getting from A to B, having the right gear with them, managing to sit down, not on top of somebody else, I guess concentrating for the lesson, those types of things. Whereas at probably the other scale of the primary intermediate years was year 7 and 8, those ones that are really good and don't like participating with the ones that aren't so good, or the ones who don't really like doing PE lessons, trying to get them engaged and involved in lessons too, to trying to get that participation and contribution aspect coming from those key competencies. So obviously asking the questions to yourself, what have you noticed as a general across your class? What do you think you need to work on moving forward for this term? And obviously your school values really do come into play here, and they will often have really similar ones across the schools too. So next column.
Cool. Okay, so then we've got a unit theme and title, and that might seem kind of quite a simple concept, or what's the title for the block of work you want to do, but actually this played an important part of shifting that shift in focus. So we encourage them to have really sort of snazzy names and something a little bit interesting, so the kids, it moves away from we are doing football or whatever it might be to something like, in one school I was in, it was teamwork makes the dream work. You know, and it was a little bit interesting, a little bit different, inspired the kids, made them a little bit sort of curious as to what this was all about. But it also helped the teachers to shift away from just focusing in on this is the context, to actually thinking about what are our intentions for this block of work. So that was kind of the theme. We did look to, within the theme, maybe incorporate those, as Shanley just said, the key comps or the school values. School values are really powerful. It may be into that theme or title as well. Is there any questions with any of that? Cool. Do you?
All right. And our next column, basically achievement objectives. So which level of the curriculum are you working at? Now most of our primary students obviously working between level 1 and 4. But which AOs are actually going to fit the theme that you're working on, working back towards that unit title or theme, or what you've noticed from your learners, what actually is going to be a good fit for you. And teachers often will look and go, oh, there's a lot to choose from, how many should I put on there? And I usually say ideally 2, maximum 3 AOs. If you have more than that, obviously it's too many to be working towards within a unit. But it's also important that you concentrate on that whole AO, so it's not just that first part, so experience creative, regular and enjoyable physical activity, but it's also, and probably more importantly, describing the benefits to wellbeing. So it's important that the teachers actually cover the whole aspect of the AO. What we've found is quite good practice with our teachers too is putting in front of them the AOs for their particular year level and getting them to traffic like that. So red being, we don't do that at all. Orange we do sort of, and greens we do that really well, and it makes them really see a big picture as to what they're actually covering. And yes, they often cover that strand B really well. It's the other 3 strands that they're kind of a bit of a mismatch sometimes. So it's important for them to look at covering, I guess not all of them across the year, absolutely. Over 2 years possibly, but making sure they have a range when you do a year plan with them that cover the 4 different strands, so we're not just taking that strand B all the time.
I think as a secondary school, in the secondary school space, if you're looking at your junior program, it's a good chance to have a little bit of an audit there too, and just look at those AOs that you've got attached to your unit and say, are we actually covering the entirety of the AO? It's something, now that we've had a little bit of time and space to be looking at the curriculum, we realise that, I put my hand up and think, well, I don't reckon I really covered the AOs as I really should have in their entirety, so it's possibly a good chance to look at those, doing that activity. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Learning intentions and success criteria. This is actually the easiest bit with primary teachers because they do this all day. WALTs, learning intentions, whatever else they call them. Hold on, just get to my thing. Yep. So once those AOs were decided upon, it was easy to take them through this space. They were actually quite efficient, the teachers we work with. The key thing was to always getting them to go back. So go back to your AO. Is that learning intention meeting that achievement objective? Is it meeting the theme? Is it meeting the needs of the kids? So always looking back on that plan, because they can sometimes get carried away and start writing down all these learning intentions that don't actually really relate back to the curriculum and the real need. What else have I got there? So less is more, just like Shanley said with the AOs. So we're encouraging less learning intentions, but just doing them really well, making sure that the learning's rich and has a bit of depth. Yeah, and also then the success criteria. So then the next column along is, what do we want to see and hear from our students if they are meeting that learning intention, which in turn will be meeting the AO, which will be meeting the whole theme of the unit. So, so coming up with those success criteria. Any questions again? Connected curriculum.
Cool, thank you. And I guess part of this too, obviously, is looking at what else is happening in your school at that time, which you could connect your students to. Lots of examples, obviously, we could fit into, and often they try and attach it to the term inquiry. That's where you usually get a lot of traction getting this into your school. But obviously, literacy and numeracy, we've got lots of cool games that we've learnt. Rob Gambalati taught us a really cool game called 22 Skidoo, which we push out into schools a lot, and we think there's a lot of kids playing that game now, and it's basically a good numeracy game. But lots out there, and obviously Sport NZ have that 90 ways to get students moving through different curriculum areas, so that's a really good resource. You've got your language weeks for coming up at the moment. Obviously, I think Cook Island Week is coming up really soon, so there's lots of games around that which we could incorporate too. And then we've obviously got school and national events, but obviously we've got the Olympics coming up soon. We've got the World Cups for women coming up the next, I guess, 18 months as well. So you can always tap into that stuff as well. Yeah.
Cool. Questions for explicit learning. This is something that when we go into a school and we see a bit of PE going on, is something that we weren't seeing a lot of. Busy, happy, good. Some of you will be aware of that term. Is a lot of what we saw. Busy kids, they're happy, they're all good. So actually part of this planning process, and one of the final bits that we use is actually talking to the teachers about what questions they're actually going to ask and actually having them planned out. So some of the examples.
Sorry.
That's right. So I've got here when, what, why, who, how. So what are you doing, and what did you are you focusing on today? Did you show sportsmanship today? Why was communication important? Who benefits or benefited when we communicated well? Who did you? Oh, hold on. How did you show someone you were listening in the game? So those are some examples of the kinds of questions, depending on what the intention of the lesson was and what they were looking to see. So making those questions really explicit in the planning. Probably a next step from that with some schools is actually, and this is the beauty of being in that primary space, is actually getting some of those questions and things they want to ask the kids explicitly up on the walls of the classroom, so that they're there and they're easily related to at different times. Pre, during and post lesson. So what are the questions at the start? What are you going to look at during the learning experience? And what are we going to ask at the end of the lesson? Teacher-led, peer, small group opportunities, obviously mixing that up, encouraging them to do that, and mixing up the questions across a block of work, so it's not completely the same questions and the kids are getting bored with it or just giving the same answers. So just try to refresh it, mix it up as they go through. Yep.
Yeah, and I found that teachers were said to me that I've worked with that's been the biggest change in their planning, is actually asking questions related to the AOs rather than just say strategies within the game to get people working, I guess, to win the game. So that's been the big change, and they said that having some pre-planned questions has been helpful, but they've also, because they're really good teachers, can then kind of take the questions where the students kind of lead them to as well. So it's just a starting point just to get them in that frame of mind about the AOs rather than the skills that go with the game, essentially.
Yeah, primary teachers I've found it really good at connecting to other things that are going on in the day, using those questions that they've got there and connecting it to different things and across different curriculum areas. They're good at that. Probably, better than I was. Choosing your context.
Thank you. So a question to you, why do we do this last? Again, discuss in your wee groups there. Why do we do this last? Do you do it last? I guess is a question too, yeah?
Good to see you too.
Photo of you too. Hope you don't mind.
No, just say this is where they
Prodigies.
come. Yeah.
Choosing it last, I mean, where are we going to teach this? Why would we choose
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
the
What
learning
context, yeah.
experience, the activity that they're doing is last. Marisa talked about it, I think, too.
Why would we choose rugby and
Why are we doing the context last?
I don't think that people are.
That's what we're trying to change them. This is the real. This is where the external provision is a big one for us, and how we're trying to change
22
the behaviour in our RSD
Oh, no,
to go
J-
do your
Rob
planning first, and
Gambalati,
then
we did
choose
the
who
PD
you want
session
to
in
come
Auckland
in,
with
and
our advisors,
if you
and
want
it
them
was
to come and
open
help you
clicky
with
game,
something,
it's
or what
awesome.
can you do?
Basically, all the kids are involved, and they're all running, and they're doing maths at the same time. And they don't really realise it's really good. Yeah. So 22 skidoo. Yeah, but yeah. You can flick me an email at the end, and I'll send it out to you anyway. But yeah,
Always
it's
led
cool.
by what's happening external to the school. And those cluster
No,
events,
he's got it somewhere in his
as they
vault
can.
of but I can send it to you. Yeah. I'm sure he'd be happy to share. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And what's time like?
I think we're like 10 past.
20 minutes. Only 20 minutes. Oh,
Yeah, 20 minutes.
There'll be discussion at the end. Eh?
Yeah.
Let's have
Cool.
the UA.
Okay, I'll bring you back in again. Anyone want to pitch their answer as to why we do this part last in our planning? Or why we should do it last? Yeah.
The learning drives the context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else?
So you can link it into what the students want to do, an activity the students want to do.
Yeah, cool. Any other ideas? Yeah.
You can take up the context out of the sport that you, the lesson that you're doing with kids. So it dictates the learning.
Yeah, dictates it. Yeah. Anything else?
Does that actually happen? The context first?
What's that? Sorry?
Is that happening?
Mixed probably. Yeah. Obviously, we're trying to change it in our work, so decide on that context last. But obviously, it still happens in some spaces as well. Still, yeah. Cool. So I guess it doesn't really matter what context you choose, really. I mean, you're getting your student voice, so it matters in that sense, working on what they want to do. But sometimes, obviously, they don't know what they don't know as well. So offering them some different ideas, because we've gone into schools and said, like, what do you want to do? And it's still quite sport focused, but we say, hey, what about this? Like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. What about this? Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. So giving them some different opportunities to try new things might slightly change their voice as well. Yeah. As I said before, in our work we've been trying to steer our teachers away from that sport focused and that cluster event focus as well. Think outside the traditional context, and obviously that Move Well resource has been really fantastic in opening the eyes to new ideas. So thanks to the different people who put that together. We want to obviously make sure we've got inclusive context too, avoid those elimination games. And obviously when we go into schools and work with teachers, sometimes we're team teaching, we say, hey look, we're playing this game because you've got no kids on the sideline at the moment, do you? You know, everyone's playing. If you do get out, there's a chance to get back into the game. It's not like you have a 2-minute space of running around and then you're on the sideline for 10 minutes, you know, trying to get them involved in those games for the whole time. Context, obviously, that suit the AOs and learning intentions. So Infinity Tag, not really it's more of an individual game, you know. However, if you're working on team games, I guess communication and teamwork in your unit, probably not the best choice of game, but hey, it's not a bad one because it's not elimination, that's for sure, okay? And try and get that variety of learning experiences across the year. So when you do end up, ideally the grand plan is to get a year plan in together and you'll see a variety of activities. So you're not just doing octopus tag or you're just not doing football through the whole year for your PE, particularly in that primary space where they need to kind of get a bit more variety going on. As we've said to teachers before too, you don't have to be the expert in all these sports or activities. We're not trying to create the next All Black or Silver Fern. We're trying to get them active and have fun so they actually want to participate in activity later on in life. So you don't have to be that expert coach in these things, and you've got lots of cool resources, which is essentially one of the next slides, I think, about you know, to actually tap into and use. So on that note, the next one, so we have got links in our PowerPoint which we'll send out to you, but if I click on them now, it takes us to a different space and it's a bit tricky, so I'm just going to have them up here at the moment. So Move Well, great resource, lots of new ideas, and teachers who we've presented to love it. When it wasn't quite electronic, they said to us, when are we getting this? So it's really cool to see they're actually using it and want more of that kind of stuff. We've also created a Google site, actually thanks to Ricky at Sports Southland too, he kind of put us in this direction, creating a site where there's all the different, I guess, useful PE and health sites in one space for our teachers, so you're most welcome to use that. And just because Matariki obviously was quite recent, I just put the link to the Sport Waikato traditional Māori games link up there too, which is really, really useful tool for our teachers, which we've handed out to them lots as well. But I guess the question is, and often the point is there's often too much and it's hard to choose which one you want to do, but what else is out there for you to look into? There's heaps to go for, but I guess it's your students, if you ask them, but also there's other things what you can explore as well.
Sort of when you follow this with primary teachers, when we followed this process and got to choosing context, it's sort of quite amazing to see the pennies drop for the teachers to say, wow, okay, I haven't really thought of teaching like this. There's so many different ways that I could teach this particular learning intention. There's almost a feeling at times of a bit of liberation from these teachers to be able to move away from what they thought they had to do. Yeah,
and someone said, is this how you plan for PE? I'm like, yeah. They thought, we do this for other subjects. I'm like, yeah, come on, you can do it for this one too,
So I had a school where they talked about wanting to build the culture of their class, and I said, well, have you heard of ABL? And it's called, they said, that's camp games. We do that at camp, that's camp games. And I sort of had to say, well, you don't have to actually use them at camp. But proceeded to design a really cool block of PE using ABL type games. I think they were from Silver Bullets and Quetzalcoatl. They were old as the hills, but they were really awesome. So interesting stuff. Okay, is this us? Oh, hello. All right. Now, this is a really interesting bit because we actually, in a lot of our work using this kind of concept-driven process, assessment has been not something that there's been either a desire for or we haven't had time to get to. So we're still kind of working our way to this point with a lot of our schools. We've seen quite a variety. We've seen everything on the spectrum really at the different schools we're at, right from just simple OTJs based on, I don't know, pulling them out of the air, right through to kind of systematically gathering data against kind of a schedule. So it's kind of anything in the middle, if anything at all. It's mostly down to the left-hand side usually. So assessment for us is kind of a new piece, but what we have got, what we have got in here, should we put that on now?
Yeah, just give me like a minute while I...
So if you were in the last session with Made to Move guys, Ricky and Carla, you would have seen on the wall they had an assessment rubric that they've designed. Basically, they call it curriculum progression indicators. Now, it's quite useful. If you haven't seen that, definitely have a look at this. This will be really relevant right across years 1 to 10. Here we go. My apologies, incorrect pin, that's not ideal. There we go, caps lock's on, that's awesome. Here we go. Yeah, throw me off, Alan. Anyway, so what you'll see up here is this is it's aligned to levels 1 of 4 of the curriculum. Each AO is unpacked with an indicator or example of what you would want to see or hear from the students to know they are meeting that AO. So I thought that was quite cool, just as a point of reference to use. Obviously, that's based on the curriculum levels. It's kind of below, at, or beyond the curriculum, perhaps. But you could adapt it in your school if you were using an NAME system, I guess. You could adapt it. So that's just one example. But what we wanted to ask you guys, or get you chatting about, is what are you doing, or what experience have you had with assessment for PE? So just at your tables, chat to the people next to you. What are you currently doing? What have you seen? What would you like to do? Cool. Righto.
Yeah, that's all right, mate. Yeah. That's basically it. Hey.
Yeah.
Give them 3 minutes chat about that.
I clearly didn't learn much, did I? I actually said to someone the other day, because someone said to me the other day, I go, no, actually it made me regress. I think I regressed. Yeah, I can't keep up.
Can that go up to my level 3s as well?
Oh, yeah. It's just, what it is have a look at it, because it's just like, it's got level 4 in there. Yeah, you can't see it.
Sort of year 9.
Year 9. So if you have a look at what they've got, the thing is they've gone through with it because they've got the time and space. They've gone fine-tooth comb every single, with the fight. They're the guys from Made to Move who have been doing what we're doing for a few years. So they just had the time and space to be able to go through the AOs and just go, hey, what are we looking to see? It's funny what you can do with a bit of time and space.
It's tricky, because it kind of confirms what the kids and parents already know.
Yeah.
If you've got a sedentary kid and
Yeah.
you tell them they're sedentary,
Uh,
you're kind of
yeah,
reaffirming.
affirming it, yeah.
Like same at high school, like if you don't like PE and we start assessing you at
Yeah.
PE,
Yeah, all
we're
it's going
just
to say.
putting you off.
Yeah.
Like let's do something a little bit more meaningful
To-
around.
To be honest, most of the schools that I've worked with don't, like they're not really doing a lot in that space. It's just kind of pulled out of the air. And in some ways,
We
I'm kind
haven't
of like,
got to that place yet.
Or can we move
Ricky
you
Ricky
guys?
showed us the other day, we're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
a good thing we could put in here.
yeah,
I'd like to
And
get to that point.
yeah,
but-
totally,
Moving forward
yeah,
time,
totally, yeah,
Have you moved yourself?
Yeah.
And if you personally think
Yeah.
that you've moved yourself,
yeah,
then that's cool.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
have
eh?
that conversation
Yeah,
and-
I might get you to share that, mate.
I've said enough. I've already
But
asked
yeah, no,
about
you're right, eh?
Too many Google
Yeah,
forms. So
I think that's that sort of goal setting. Set yourself a goal. Where can you move to within a little, whether it's a little framework or whatever it is. Eh? Way more powerful than someone else just judging you and telling
we
you.
used to have like a junior diploma, and it was like at the junior end,
Yeah.
year 9, 10, it was like, is this for credits? Is this for
Yeah.
credits? And it
Yes.
wasn't, but it was meant, the
Yeah.
intention was to get them ready for
Yeah, yeah.
credits.
Yeah, yeah.
But it got too heavy on the
Yeah,
on the thinking.
yeah,
Is this for? Is this
Yeah,
for
it
credits?
became
It's
this-
like, nah. Oh, do we have to do it then? Because I want to
yeah.
get.
Teaching to assess, and then you sort of the kids are almost forcing you to teach to assessment, and
And it happens too much anyway. Or
Yeah.
I don't need
Yeah,
these.
yeah. Credit picking or whatever they call
Right,
it.
and then they get
Yeah.
smarter about it. But have you really
Yeah.
worked it out? Because what if you miss out on those
Because
science?
they co-constructed with a school, didn't
No,
they?
I
when they
won't,
were doing
but-
this?
Yeah. Oh, something
Yeah.
happened. I
What's
didn't
your
realise I
plan
was
B?
going to be off work, school for a week or whatever.
Speak to me like when you're on study leave, say you need more credits.
Yeah.
But it's,
Yeah.
I think South
No.
says P and if
Yeah.
it's brought up right from
Yeah.
the start,
Yeah.
and it's always been something
Yeah.
that they do.
Yeah.
Everything when
Yeah.
they get to high school, it's nothing new. Whereas right now,
Yeah.
there's no assessment, and then they get to this
Yeah.
level, and all of a sudden they've got books thrown
Yeah.
at you
Yeah.
pretty much, and
Totally.
this is kind of what you need to do to get past.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go, actually we're all about
Yeah, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
you being able to manage yourself,
Yeah.
and then peer assessment as well.
Yeah.
Because
if it's on the gym wall, then that's all.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know, that's how
They do it quite well in primary school. Level 1 and 2 of the curriculum, you probably haven't looked at that lately, but you have a look at it, it's quite interesting. It's quite good for kids to be able to, it's quite good for kids to be, they do it really well because it's asking them about enjoyable experiences and what it means to stay safe, and it's quite easy for self-assessment.
Yeah.
Right, move on.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
last one, mate.
Yeah, I'll check it back here.
Okay, is that me or you? Last one.
Oh, sweet. That's basic, yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Where is it? Close you.
Okay, do you want to get some questions going? Or?
I don't think so. We've only got, what have we got? We've got 3 minutes till 25 past.
Aye.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Well done. Yeah. Okay, I'll just bring you back in again.
Oh yeah, everything in here is shared. Yeah, so when you so if
The
you,
next slide,
yeah,
yeah.
we'll explain to you. Yeah. Next one.
Cool. So that's basically the end of our presentation. But it's kind of just taking you along, I guess, the journey that we've been with our schools and kind of where we're at. So yes, we haven't quite got to the assessment piece, but it was one example of what has been created. But obviously, there's different opportunities for assessment in different places. But if you would like our slide, just feel free to email us. I've just put my Sport Waitakere address because that will be my new one in about a week's time. But yeah, is there any questions people have for us either now? We've got a little bit of time before, we've got I think about 5 minutes before we are supposed to finish, so we've got some time to chat if you'd like some questions answered. Yeah.
Because I'm from Auckland, how can I contact you?
Great, because I'm leaving Auckland. Yeah.
What part? Hey, what part
Wait,
of
what
Auckland?
part of Auckland? Yeah. Yeah, what part? Yeah.
I would like to actually come and then see how the girls are doing in terms of sport and activity in the school.
Maybe have a little chat about it afterwards. Yeah, that cool? Yeah. Jamie.
Can you see more facetas in primary?
Oh,
Purely physio trained and being employed in primary to teach physio?
I guess it's hard to say because I didn't know what it was like prior to this. But certainly in the 10 schools that I work in, there's probably only one school that has a dedicated physio teacher. The rest are just classroom, normal classroom practitioners. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think in the 10 schools I'm in, I don't have any. One of our colleagues has one, I think, one or two. But you do get teachers that are given a bit of extra time release time to kind of lead a bit. So it's a bit of a continuum, really. Yeah. So maybe not a specialist, but someone who's doing a bit of PE for others. If that's one way to put it. But sometimes that's sport leading, eh? Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah.
Nikki?
Any advisors?
Now with 36 schools in South Auckland, we don't have any
No.
specialists.
Sarah?
I just want to ask us another question.
Yeah.
Since the University of Waikato is at the table,
Yeah.
what do you think the teacher training program could look like?
Well, I don't even think I'll go. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can. Shanley?
Yeah, or even the University of Auckland's here too, So yeah.
I'll answer for the University of Waikato. There's not a lot of health and physical education and initial teacher education, and there's probably going to be less than the next few years.
So I will answer from the University of Waikato because I would give quite a answer. So in our undergrad primary we have a full course, 48 hours contact, 150 hours paper. I guess my struggle today is I would like to think we actually cover a whole range of this, and we debated it at Sport Waikato in a session lately. We went, what are we doing wrong? Because it just isn't landing, doesn't sink. So yeah, it fully takes a whole lot of responsibility around that stuff as well. But it's an ongoing challenge because I don't think it matters what we do if we go back out into schools and the curriculum is still framed around cross country, jump jam, life education, swimming, small balls, then we're pushing shit uphill. So I go in, I'm a beginning teacher, and I'm just going to fall into line with what everyone else is doing. And the other point I'd make is I'm not sure secondary is doing any better than the junior school. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
When you should give us one of those, I just winded her up.
Celia had a hand up. Yeah.
I was just wondering with this planning framework, whether you've thought about where the underlying concepts fit into that, and whether is that something that you're going to layer in when perhaps people confident, or
Yeah.
like where does that?
Essentially, you've hit the nail on the head there. That should really, where it says curriculum connection, that's where the underlying concepts have been. But we've probably, I'll be honest with you, often we get given a bit of a restricted amount of time to try and cover a bit of planning stuff. You're usually pushed into planning meetings, 45-minute planning meetings, and so it's like, what can we cover? Underlying concepts, when we're in front of the school, and unpacking that curriculum, absolutely, the underlying concepts are in there. But yeah, perhaps when we're doing this, it's probably been touched on without really always being part of it. But yeah, absolutely, no, I take that point.
Yeah.
So I'm actually I'm a PE specialist in a primary school.
Oh,
I
awesome.
do teach in a high school as well. Yeah, but it took me a long time, it's still work in progress for me to explain what physical education is, and it's just a lot of pushback from teachers, especially ones that have been there for a while. I was originally employed to go in and they were supposed to come to my lessons so they could learn and upskill, which was such a cool concept. It doesn't work, just because we're so busy, we've just got to zip out, and I was a lot younger then when I went in, and older teachers were just, I didn't feel like I had power or authority to sort of go, oh no, but you have to stay, and so that didn't work, and it ended up them just not coming. And I did go in, they were like, yeah, we need to do some athletics, some cross country, let's practice our swimming, and here's me, there's people who have been there 20 years, some of them going, absolutely not, this is not what we're doing, but it's been a slow grind. I've been there 14 years now, and I'm slowly have changed that culture, just each year taking one of those lessons out, basically, weaning them off, till the, just let's leave me alone and get on with what I want to do. So, pretty much, I just don't think you can go in and try and change it like that, especially in an organisation that's quite traditional in ways. it definitely is possible. You just have to be a little bit patient.
Yeah, I was going to answer this guy's question.
Yeah, jump in.
Before. The way that it can be funded, I've been a PE specialist in a primary school too, and that was funded by the Board of Trustees. So the classroom teacher had 2 release periods a week. One was music, the other was PE. So it'd be done. That's on me.
Yeah, the release period.
Yeah, and for sport, they would bring out 4 year 1 classes. They would stand at their stations, and you just have to like shout at them. You go there, you go there. Try and manage 4 games of sport at the same time. So it's got a bit hard. I left. Yeah, it's 500 kids. You do 20 classes of PE a week. It'll be year 1, morning tea, year 1, year 1.
Yeah.
And then sport, and then next day it'll be year 2, morning tea. It's just a bit of a It's
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how we can change that, but
I know how you
yeah.
can change that with school leadership, with bold and courageous school leadership. So with all these initiatives or any change in schools, it has to be seen as valued and come from the top down. And that's where, like, I would say you haven't been supported greatly by school leadership, because if they made it a priority, if they said this is the expectation, this is how we do things around here, then that's when you start to get that buy-in, and that's what we've identified as just absolutely critical in in implementing change, is having that school leadership on board.
I'm just a little conscious of time, but Alan, off you go. Yeah, last one.
It's a very strange point. I just wondered if you'd have some impact if you went in with a Ministry of Education t-shirt. It kind of seems like this, conundrum of coming in with sport on your t-shirt and talking about quality physical education. And to counter that, they couldn't have got better people to actually promote that. But within that, not having that within inside the official bubble of education and being an advisor and having that authority speaking on behalf of that, I think is far more powerful than being connected through sports organisations. And it should be about life-fulfilling activity.
I think on an individual basis we've been real clear to take the time to explain who we are as people and what we're here to do, irrelevant of necessarily who we're representing on our shirt or whatever, and just once we build those relationships, they sort of get to know. But it has taken a lot of time. There's some schools that I'm just starting to make that relationship now. I've been doing it 18 months. Yes, COVID, but we won't use that word. But yeah.
Alan, I might just add with that as well that this is a collaborative initiative with the Ministry of Education. So regionally, the local regional Ministry of Education officers are very much involved in developing and brokering those relationships with the schools. So absolutely, they're going in, most of them other than Wellington and Southland who have just rebranded, they're going in with sport at the start of their organisation and having to break down some of those kind of perceptions around what those organisations are doing. But there is definitely Ministry of Education support and investment for group
We need that branding, that's all.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to finish it off there. Thank you for the great discussion at the end, though. Some really good points brought up. And again, if you would like our information, feel free to email us.
Email
but yeah,
us.
thanks for attending. It's been good to see
Kia ora,
everybody.
thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.